Michael, thanks for being with us. We were kind of giving the NFL schedule release a hard time yesterday. So are we being curmudgeonly here? Do you get excited when you see the schedules come out?
I think the schedule, having been in the league for as long as I have, I think the schedule is really about the month of September. And, who are you playing early? What teams do you have to play? For example, if you're a team that has to play Cleveland, you want to play them earlier in the year because there's a chance Deshaun Watson could be suspended. You want to play new teams earlier in the season. So for me, I just kind of look at the September season and kind of see where that weighs. I mean, when you look at the September for the Patriots, really challenging schedule. They got to go to Miami. They have to play Baltimore. They have to come back and then travel to Pittsburgh the next week. And then they have Baltimore and Green Bay. That's the kind of things you look at a schedule. I never look too far in the future. There's a great quote by Thomas Carlyle, the Scottish writer, that said, "Our main business is not to see what lies dimly at a distance, but to do what lies clearly at hand." And I think that's really what matters most.
And that's exactly why we're talking schedule in May, right? One of those teams that also has a gauntlet of a schedule to start the season. The Bucs. They play the Cowboys on the road at the Saints, which is never an easy place to play. The Packers and the Chiefs. I think we're going to know real early on if this Bucs team is for real.
Well, I think you want to play a harder schedule in September because there's only 3 games in the preseason to get your team ready. And I think you really need to kind of prepare your team for that. And I think that gives you a chance to evaluate your team. You get a chance to see where you're going. You get a chance to see what you need to add to your team. And I think that's really important. So I think when you start off with a cupcake schedule, you have a harder time kind of refocusing your team. There's not a sense of urgency. And I think really you want to start good, fast, and play good teams. But when you're the Bucs or you're the Cowboys and you're coming off a first place finish, you don't get easy schedules. I mean, you're just not going to do it. It's hard. You're going to play the best teams. You're going to play the number 1 seed, the number 1 team in the conference, and that's out of conference. So, if you're good, you can play them all.
We're talking with Michael Lombardi, a 3-time Super Bowl winning NFL executive and former GM of the Cleveland Browns, also host of the GM Shuffle podcast. Michael, considering your history with the Browns, and of course they made arguably the biggest move of the offseason by bringing in Deshaun Watson, if he doesn't get suspended, how do you think he fares with the weapons around him on that Cleveland offense?
Well, I couldn't think of a better system of play offensively for Deshaun Watson than the Kevin Stefanski offense. When you have a player of the caliber of Deshaun Watson, someone who can throw the deep ball really well, somebody who's very accurate down the field, and then somebody who's got great foot quickness and movement and doesn't really want to run but can run. And the way they run their scheme, there's one play in all of football that the quarterback actually blocks somebody, and that's the boot, the nakeds. And so when he comes out of that, which is what the Browns do with their great running game, with Nick Chubb and all their backs. I mean, when he comes out of there and he sets up outside the pocket, you've got to have a defender out there with him at all times, whether he has the ball or not. You don't know whether he does. And so it just gives you a great opportunity to make big plays. And then the one knock on Baker Mayfield is when it became a drop back pass game, when he had to throw the ball from the pocket, he struggles to see down the field. And that's just a fact. It's, being 6 foot tall does hinder him. And he overthrows the passes, much like we saw Christmas or right around when he was up in Green Bay that weekend. And so I think this is a great offense for Watson, and I think he's going to make the Browns offense even more explosive.
Let's stay in the AFC North and talk about the Steelers for a second. It's tough for me to ever count out the Steelers completely just because I don't think we've ever seen a losing season since Mike Tomlin's taken over. But they do have a new starting quarterback, whether it's Kenny Pickett or Mitch Trubisky. What do you expect from the Steelers this year?
Well, I agree with you. I think, to me, the fact that Mike Tomlin won 8 games last year with that outfit, with Ben Roethlisberger can't throw the ball more than 10 yards down the field. We used to, every time you watched a Steeler game, they couldn't wait to tell you that the next-gen stats that Ben got rid of the ball quicker than anybody, like it was some achievement. No, it wasn't. He wanted to get a hit. What they were talking about as a positive. It was a complete negative. and so they couldn't throw the ball. They had no drop back pass game, and their offensive line wasn't very good. And the fact they won 8 games with that outfit is remarkable and a tribute to Mike Tomlin. So I'm with you, Chelsea. I would never rule them out. However, I think this is going to be an uphill battle for them. I think the North is better. Certainly the Bengals proved they're better as a Super Bowl team. We know the Ravens, if they stay healthy and Lamar can return to 2020 form, they're going to be good. And then Cleveland, we just talked about. So it's going to be a dogfight in that division. It's going to be very challenging. And I wouldn't rule them out, but I worry about their secondary. I would still worry about their offensive line. And I've never had faith with Mitchell Trubisky as a starting quarterback. And so even when he was the second pick overall in the draft, I wasn't buying that, and I'm not buying it today.
Michael, we've debated Tua Tagovailoa a lot on this show, and I think for good reason, because the Dolphins have done their best now to put weapons around him. This seems to be a prove-it year for him. Do you think he has what it takes? And the Dolphins are favored by 2.5 over the Pats in week 1. Do you think Tua has what it takes to be that guy in Miami?
Well, let's start with the second part. I mean, the Patriots struggled out in Miami all the time. Whether if Jacoby Brissett was quarterback, I think they'd still be favored. Because if Ryan Fitzpatrick was the starter, they'd still be favored. The heat, humidity down there has gotten to them. Now, the Raiders are going to play Vegas in the last preseason game. They're going to go out there and practice, hopefully trying to get ready for that. But I think that'll be a challenge. Look, I think Tua is one of the great media creations that we've seen. I mean, he's not fast. He's not explosive. His arm. I mean, that video that they put online yesterday that I think the guy got fired for doing it, as if it was a great throw to Tua to Tyreek Hill. I mean, it was the infield fly rule was going to get enacted on the throw. I mean, it was a joke. And so Tua doesn't have a great arm, but what Tua can do is throw the ball in timing. He can throw short passes. And they're going to have to rely on that. And I think more than anything, what bothers me about Tua's complete game is the fact that he struggles in bad weather. Go back and watch the Tennessee game. That game starts out, it's not raining yet. And Tua's okay. And then once it starts raining, the ball starts slipping out of his hand. He can't control it. He can't make the throws. And anytime they've had to play in bad weather, whether it's Buffalo 2 years ago when they had a chance to get to the playoffs, or last year against Tennessee when they were on that win streak, they struggled. So, to me, you can make all the other players around them better. It's the old Joel Embiid thing. Oh, we're going to put a lot of great players around Embiid. You're still not a very good. Are you going to be good enough? I don't know. To me, Miami with Tua, his inability to throw the ball from the pocket down the field is always concerning.
But we've seen teams with mediocre quarterbacks go, not super far. But we saw the Niners last year with Jimmy Garoppolo rely on their defense and make it to the playoffs and even go to Lambeau and take down Aaron Rodgers. So looking at teams like that, most notably the Niners, do we expect the Niners to be a real threat even with Trey Lance at quarterbacks? Because right now the books are still giving the Niners a lot of love.
Yeah, remarkable, right? So I was just writing about this morning. I mean, I have them as a 6.5 point favorite on the road in Chicago. I don't know if Trey Lance is any good. I don't think the 49ers know if Trey Lance is any good. How many stories have we heard come out of San Francisco that Trey Lance is the greatest quarterback last year and nobody's seen anything like him since the day Joe Montana roamed 711 Nevada Street in Redwood City. The reality of it is he never even got a sniff. And when he did play, it wasn't as impressive as everybody was saying. He throws the ball as if he were a jugs machine. There's nothing he takes off the throw. And then when he runs, he's, again, not explosively fast like a Lamar Jackson or a Kyler Murray. So you're concerned there. But I have faith in Kyle Shanahan. I don't know how good the 49ers are going to be. I really don't know if they're going to be able to duplicate what they did last year. I think their defense played to a great level. D'Amico Ryans did a tremendous job. Their defensive front was the key to their team. And they proved that against Dallas. They proved that against Green Bay, gave a lot of problems to Aaron Rodgers. That's how they're going to have to win. Now, they'll run the football better this year coming up than they did last year because of that. But I still think at some point we're going to have to find out how good Lance is, and I'm really not sure.
Michael, we have a couple minutes left, so I wanted to get a quick response from you. But what is one team in the NFL that could surprise us this year? Last year, it was clearly Cincinnati, who could not necessarily make a run that deep into the playoffs, but be a team that we don't anticipate to be good. Who could be?
Well, I mean, I think you have to look at, like, one of the things when you look at the schedule is, like, take the Eagles, for example. The Eagles play the NFC North, they play the AFC South, and then they play the NFC East, naturally. So there's a propensity. Like, how do they not win 10 games with that schedule? Have you looked at the Eagles' schedule? And so I think a lot of that has to do with the scheduling of who you're playing, when you're playing, and all those things. And so, and so that factors into the Giants. If Brian Daboll can get them to respectability offensively, the schedule it's not overwhelming. You're playing a lot of teams. But for me, I think the Colts are a team that could be really good. I think Matt Ryan got that crap beat out of him in Atlanta for too many years. That offensive line didn't protect them. And I think the talent level around them will be the best talent level Matt Ryan's had in a long time. I think playing in the Dome certainly helps him again. And I think the change of defense to Gus Bradley will help. I think bringing John Fox in will help Gus Bradley. I like the Colts to surprise people this year.
He is a 3-time Super Bowl winning NFL executive and host of the GM Shuffle podcast. Listen wherever you get your podcast, which you can find on the Odyssey app as well. It is Michael Lombardi on the Roman Guest Line. Michael, great stuff and great to hear from you.
Thank you so much.